Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast. I'm Simon Marks, live from Washington, D.C. And these are the top headlines of this Thursday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia now controls about 1/5 of his country, including ground gained since the invasion, the already annexed Crimean Peninsula and the territory held by Moscow-backed separatists. Major oil producers led by Saudi Arabia and Russia are to hold talks on whether to adjust output hard on the heels of an EU ban on Russian oil imports. Brazil's economy grows 1% in the first quarter of the year, even though surging inflation continues to hurt the Latin American giant. In yet another targeted killing in Kashmir, a bank manager has been shot dead by terrorists. A resident of Rajasthan in India, the manager had recently been posted to Kashmir. And what a sight in the skies over London. A special formation of 15 Red Arrow Typhoons spell out the number 70 to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee as 4-day celebrations begin, marking the monarch's 70-year reign, an unprecedented event in British history. A committee in the United States House of Representatives here in Washington is to convene an emergency session to discuss limited gun control legislative proposals in light of the series of recent mass shootings across the United States. The Judiciary Committee will take up a bill aimed at toughening national gun laws following the Texas massacre that killed 19 children and 2 teachers last week. The 41-page draft bill raises the legal age to buy certain weapons. It clamps down on trafficking guns and restricts large-capacity ammunition feeding devices. The full House has already passed legislation expanding background checks on gun buyers, but the Democrats continue to face an uphill battle to advance the legislation to the president's desk, because in the Senate they still do not have the necessary 60 out of 100 votes.
I know which one here. 10-06-2017.
And we can cross live now to New York City, where WION's correspondent Susan Tehrani is reporting for us again today. Susan, at least some movement in terms of considering some legislation with regard to limited gun reform in the United States. What's the chance any of this ultimately is going to get to the president's desk for signature?
Right. Well, Congress is really putting this legislation forward again, really similar to that abortion bill that we saw, because, they want to say that they're doing something and they can't sit back in light of the Uvalde shooting, albeit the details of the shooting and what happened really in Uvalde, Texas, albeit very tragic, are really not, clear at this point. So they have to really put this legislation forth. They want to get everyone on record on how they will vote or not. But, these are members of Congress that know very well how the system works. They know that America, democracy, and the Constitution has a framework that, for the most part, internal laws, notably on gun restrictions, will go back to the state. So they're familiar with that. And while they put this legislation forward, they know that it will probably face pushback in the Senate. But at least symbolically, as you mentioned, they want to, take these steps and again talk about limiting at least the age of gun purchases on the one hand from 18 to 21, and then some other measures as well. But the criticism that they face is because they know that these measures won't be passed, and the question is, why not reach out across the aisle and perhaps work on issues regarding crime that perhaps might get passed, which is, on mental health issues, on school safety, and even on red flag laws. Those are some things that perhaps might at least have more of an optimistic road ahead when it comes to dealing with the issue of gun violence in the United States than just focusing on the single issue of banning guns.
Susan, can we just spin back over the last 3 days? On Sunday, President Biden was yelled at by an angry crowd in Uvalde after he was comforting the families there, and they yelled at him, "Do something." He looked at them and said, "We will." The following morning, he told reporters that he wasn't in a position to dictate on issues like gun control to legislators. And he said that he hadn't yet had any conversations with Republicans about trying to advance gun control legislation. Then on Tuesday, he told reporters that he was planning to reach out to Republicans to try and advance all of this. I mean, where is the power of the bully pulpit in all of this? Where is President Biden's call to action to the American people to rise up and demand gun control if they truly want it?
The majority of the American people want some sort of gun control. They want these shootings to stop. That's completely, cross-board Republican, Democrat. But President Biden, with each passing day, seems to sound like a creature of Washington that's been there for 50 years. First of all, he understands the separation of power. He understands very well where his executive power stops. He has his hands full right now with all of the problems that he's facing. And he knows very well that even though he, could perhaps put some kind of symbolic roundtable together between the Republicans and Democrats, it's all going to be about the votes in November. And for the majority of red states and Republicans, I will guarantee to you that if they thought that any sort of gun reform would win them votes in November, they would be at the table. But President Biden knows that very well. He knows that it would be a kiss of death even for his own party if he goes ahead with doing something like this. And he has limits on his power, like I said, when it comes to this. So he understands that. And unfortunately, when it comes to other issues, he does, with a strike of a pen, takes executive action. But, when it comes to issues like this, he decides to stand back and become, quote unquote, what the media likes to call him, consoler in chief, if even that.
WION's correspondent Susan Tehrani, live for us today in New York. Thanks very much indeed, Susan. We'll see you again soon. It will come as no surprise to anyone that there has been another mass shooting in America. A gunman opened fire inside a hospital campus last night in Tulsa, Oklahoma. At least 4 people were killed. There were multiple people wounded. This incident comes less than 10 days after the Texas school massacre and 2 weeks after the racist assault at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York that left 10 people dead. The Tulsa gunman was found dead by police as they worked their way inside the building. Police suspect his fatal wounds were self-inflicted. The gunman's identity has not yet been made public and his motive is still unknown, but the authorities say this was not a random shooting, that he went to the hospital's second floor with a specific purpose in mind.
I was coming to the doctor and I got my grandkids with me in this terrible scene. It's awful, it's sad. My daughter-in-law is from Buffalo, so now it's so close to home. It's not even safe if you come outside anymore, you know. My prayers go out to everyone just in that building.
Changing gears now, Denmark has voted to join the European Union's defence policy. It's the last member of the EU to sign up. And it's a fresh signal of a big shift in the attitude of Nordic countries in light of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The EU aims to reshape the continent's security landscape. A referendum in Denmark was held on Wednesday. 66.9% of voters backed the government's proposal. 33.1% were against it. And of course, Finland and Sweden applied to join NATO only last month.
I hope that he is very frustrated about it and doesn't even want to write it down. I think it sends an important message towards our allies, saying that we wish to stand together. We have done that so far in NATO, and now we can do so in the EU realm too.
Participation in the EU's common security and defence policy will allow Denmark to take part in joint EU military operations, including those in Somalia, Mali and Bosnia. The move will also allow Danish officials to stay in the room when EU colleagues discuss defence issues. EU leaders welcomed the result, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen tweeting that Denmark's decision was a strong message of commitment to our common security, and suggesting the European Union would benefit from Denmark's expertise in defence. It's been 3 days since the European Union unanimously announced a 6th sanctions package against Russia. But now the package has been held up again, this time Hungary voicing its opposition to the blacklisting of a Russian patriarch. The ambassadors from the 27-nation bloc held a meeting to try and hammer out the legal details of the sanctions, and Hungary refused to green-light a package of measures that includes freezing the assets and blocking the travel of the head of the Russian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill. Kirill is a fervent supporter of Russian President Vladimir Putin. He has consistently backed the Kremlin's military campaign in Ukraine. That's why most EU governments have vehemently supported adding his name to the sanctions list. Other proposed additions to the blacklist include President Putin's alleged girlfriend and former gymnast Alina Kabayeva. In an effort to iron out the differences, EU officials said that they were ready to hold a fresh round of talks later on Wednesday, but Hungary's persistent efforts to delay this 6th package of sanctions has rocked EU unity over the Kremlin's war in Ukraine. Today is the 99th day of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. While the world has been gripped by the consequences of the war, the citizens of Taiwan have started taking shooting lessons. Civilians are picking up rifles for the first time in their lives, in part inspired by Russia's aggression towards Ukraine. The aim is to boost defences in Taiwan, especially at a time when China is increasing its military pressure on the island.
Taiwanese who have never held a gun before are taking shooting lessons for the first time, as Russia's invasion of Ukraine ramps up anxiety. Their fear is that giant neighbour China could make a similar move on the democratic island. Taiwan tightly controls gun ownership and the use of these airsoft guns, which are similar to BB guns, is taught for competitions. China's growing military pressure on the island it claims as its own, combined with the conflict in Ukraine, has spurred debate about how to boost defences in Taiwan, including whether to extend compulsory military service. Max Chiang is CEO of Polar Light, a combat skills training company.
At the moment, the number of people participating in this kind of activity in Taiwan is currently increasing. This has been already a trend in the past 2 years. Since Chinese fighter jets started flying close to Taiwan, there has been an increase. After the Ukraine war started, the numbers have tripled or quadrupled. More and more people are coming to take part.
Some in Taiwan fear that China, which has never ruled out using force to bring the island under its control, may take advantage of a West distracted by the Ukraine conflict. Tattoo artist Su Chun was determined to learn how to use the air guns.
In case of war, the country will notify reservists to gather in a certain location, and then hand out guns and other equipment. Because most likely, there will be teams made up of many people. I think there will certainly be all kinds of people. Those who are prepared, people who aren't prepared, and also those who are panicking. I think all those types of people will be there. I am sure that most people don't want to go to war. I also don't want to go to war. But in the unfortunate event of this really happening, I will be mentally prepared.
Taiwan has raised its alert level but has reported no unusual military movements by Beijing. But some politicians in Taiwan have urged the public to start thinking about survival plans.
The World Health Organization is warning that new outbreaks of monkeypox and Lassa fever may be linked to climate change. The WHO says it's a driving factor behind an uptick in global infections.
Outbreaks of endemic diseases like monkeypox are becoming more frequent, the World Health Organization's Emergencies Director Mike Ryan warned on Wednesday. As climate change contributes to rapidly changing weather conditions like drought, animals and humans are changing their behavior. The result, Ryan said, is diseases that typically circulate in animals are increasingly jumping into humans.
So what we're dealing with is a lot of ecologic fragility. We're dealing with the animal-human interface being quite unstable, and the number of times that these diseases cross into humans increasing, and then our ability, or unfortunately, that ability to amplify that disease and move it on within our communities increasing.
Ryan also pointed to an upward trend in cases of Lassa fever, an acute viral illness spread by rodents endemic to Africa. And Ebola outbreaks, Ryan said, used to be years apart. Now it's months.
So I think this is a lesson. These diseases will continue to emerge. They will continue to pressure. They will continue to cross the species barrier. The question is, are we in a position to collectively respond?
Ryan's comments come amid rising cases of monkeypox. The illness spreads through close contact, causing flu-like symptoms and a distinctive rash. On Wednesday, the UK's Health Security Agency said an outbreak of the viral disease in England appears to be spreading from person to person and without links to travel. WHO head Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said there have been 550 confirmed cases of the viral disease in 30 countries outside of Africa where the pathogen is endemic.
Investigations are ongoing, but the sudden appearance of monkeypox in many countries at the same time suggests there may have been undetected transmission for some time.
Still, on Monday, the WHO said it does not believe the outbreaks outside of Africa will lead to a pandemic.
Abu Dhabi has announced a ban on single-use plastic bags ahead of the COP28 Global Environmental Conference due to take place next year. According to officials, the ban has been put in place to encourage sustainable living in Abu Dhabi. Retailers in the Emirate are encouraged to offer a sustainable alternative, including reusable bags. The alternative options are required to be environment-friendly and available at a nominal cost to consumers. There are exemptions. They include medicine bags, plastic rolls used in supermarkets, rubbish sacks, and shopping bags from big brands are excluded from the ban. Meanwhile, Dubai has also announced that beginning next month, the free provision of single-use plastic bags will end. The UAE has also set a target to become carbon neutral by the year 2050. The goals were set out last year at the COP26 conference that was held in Glasgow. According to a February 2019 report, the UAE currently consumes 11 billion plastic bags every year. Researchers in the Japanese capital Tokyo say that they have found an alternative to cement, and perhaps a more environmentally friendly one.
Food waste is a huge problem in Japan. In fact, it is one of the top countries in terms of food waste. It is estimated that Japan generates more than 25 million tons of food waste a year. Out of this, approximately 6 million tons is edible. Why is this happening? Analysts attribute this to the existing food sanitation law in the country. The food sanitation law in Japan sets dual expiry dates for products. The first one reads, recommend to use by, and the second one says, taste best if used by. As a result of this, the consumers get confused and discard the products while they are still edible. Researchers in this laboratory inside the University of Tokyo are now trying to turn this obstacle into an opportunity. They say they have an idea that could solve several problems. Kota Mashida and Yuva Sakai are developing an environment-friendly technology. A technology that can transform food waste into an environment-friendly cement for construction. With this, they hope to help in reducing global warming, food waste and methane emission.
My specialization is concrete, so I was originally researching concrete. Concrete has a high negative impact on the environment as it produces carbon dioxide. Also, primary materials for concrete such as limestone have been decreasing worldwide.
Sakai first developed a way to make this cement by subjecting pulverized wood particles to heat compression. It is a three-step process starting with drying, pulverization and compression. However, this technology comes with its own challenges. Researchers faced an issue with forming a perfect concrete. Initially, the concrete needed plastic to stick together, but with repeated trials they realized that the particles might stick together by adjusting the temperature and pressure.
It was difficult to form concrete perfectly. First, even when we pressed the particles, it did not form properly and remained as powder, and sometimes it was completely melted. We had many trials and errors in the beginning, which was challenging.
Researchers say that the cement can be made waterproof and pest repellent. This can be done by coating it with Japanese lacquer. Food wastage is not just a Japanese problem, it is a huge concern globally. If this cement materializes as planned, it can be reused and buried when it is no longer needed. Above everything, this cement is biodegradable. This recyclable cement has the potential to change the future, but can it? Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Finally from us today, the Sydney Opera House is set to reopen in July after a major infrastructural transformation that includes the installation of cutting-edge acoustic treatments to deal with long-standing complaints about sound quality in the concert hall. As the upgrade nears completion ahead of the venue's planned 50th birthday celebrations, the sound of builders hard at work is music for the ears of fans. And to celebrate the reopening, the Sydney Symphony Orchestra is planning a special performance of Mahler's Second Symphony, known as the Resurrection Symphony. Seems apt. We'll leave you with that story, and I'll see you again soon for another edition of WION Live Broadcast from Washington. Stay with WION. World is One.
This is great, Arab.